we are finally almost to standardizing trim. It's going through change approval right now. This list that you see on my screen is the list of trim sizes that we're cutting it down to. As you can see, probably tell, we're ditching bodyguard as a standard option. So AZEK will be the standard for all hardy siding and stuff. And then cedar is obviously for cedar siding. The one discrepancy on here that might change is if they decide to go with the 1x2 for the corner trim, which means that they wouldn't be rabbiting at all. It would just be a 3/4 inch trim next to the siding, and the siding just butts right up into it. Then the under-eave fascia board, which is like at the top of the wall under the sloped roofs overhang, that would probably want to change to the 1x8 with the 3/4 actual size to match the 3/4 of the corner. So going along with this, we're going to set up the trim families to have a lot less types.
Hey, Ryan, can I stop you for a second? Sorry. Could you go back to that list of trim that you had up? I think it's great that we're doing this. Like I'm sure all of you have seen in the trim file that we have a million different types and nobody knows what's standard. So I think this is much more simplified. I know just one thing to point out on the under-eave fascia. There are places where we don't have enough room between trim for clear story windows and that 5/4 by 8 trim to fit underneath the roof. So I don't know if change management is aware of those locations, but we might need to have a narrower trim for certain situations where we have clear story windows.
Okay. So like a 5/4 by 6 probably.
Yeah, I don't know exactly what the space is, but I know there are some people working on balances, and this came up with the balance seed model, where we do have clear story windows, and there's not enough room for both of those. So I don't know.
Really?
I mean, I think it's generally probably fine to have that 7 1/4, but maybe we should make it smaller so that it works in all cases and just have one defined standard rather than saying it's 7 1/4 unless you have clear story windows and then it's this sort of thing. But that might be a product NOCT level sort of decision.
Yeah, I think that would be the case. I'm pretty sure it happens on the low side of the element too. So on the fixed wall, the windows are pretty much at the bottom face of that under-eave fascia trim. So what I did was just I ran the window trim up to the under-eave fascia board. But that might change depending on heights of windows, awning windows versus casement. I don't know. So I think that's definitely something to bring up with NOCT and product development. But I'll just go into the Revit families now and show you sort of, we're going to break it out into a standard like window, corner, and door trim family, so exterior trim standard, and then separate that from a fascia trim family, which has the option for a plumb cut at the corners so that we can use it both for the roof fascia and the under-eave fascia and have it cut at the corner board really nicely so that it doesn't extend out in our drawings and look bad. So I'll show you an example of how it works in here. So this is actually the Breeze Atrium Revit file that I've been working on with NOCT and product development. And so I have been testing these new trim families in here. And this is the exterior trim fascia piece with a plumb cut angle of 69.41, which you can, it's going to be different for the range of products. So you got to find the angle that you need from the angle of the roof and the straight down angle of the wall. And then from there, you can input that angle into this instance parameter of the family. Now, the family also has a type parameter called a plumb cut start, which actually starts a negative 16th of an inch behind where the back face of the trim is, and that is so that any piece that needs to be the same type so that they join correctly, but doesn't want to have a plumb cut, you can set the plumb cut end, which is also an instance parameter, because you would have this instance of the same board that wants to have a plumb cut and this one that doesn't. You set the plumb cut end to 0 so that the void extrusion doesn't cut out any of the actual geometry of the trim, but you still have that as an option for the other instances of that type. If I were to set this to the other trim family, it wouldn't join correctly. And even though they are joined, like if I click on this and it won't give me that as an option, they are joined, but there's still a seam there because it's not the same family. So that's why I had to do that. And now you see, like, I switch it back and it automatically defaults to the 60-degree plumb cut, but I can negate that by changing plumb cut end to 0, and then you get a nice seamless transition. So you can also use it for the fascia boards on the actual roof. Here I haven't actually in this family done that, but as you all probably know, those fascia boards are all 1-bys, so the 3/4 inch by 8, 7 1/4, 9 1/4 for 1x10, so that we get the right finish up there. That's pretty much all I have to show, I think. Does anybody have any questions?
Hey Ryan, it's Michael. I think it's great. I mean, we obviously needed to standardize this stuff for a long time. Another type of trim that I think we should consider is trim that's like, say, under a door in between a deck, where you'll start with obviously a stock size, and that's what you want to put in the model so that you the part would actually be cut to whatever that depth is. So if because I know that height can change depending on the project. So it would be good to have a trim that has the width as an instance parameter also, so that you start with your 1x6, but you cut it to an actual 4.5, right?
Yeah, I wonder if that could just be like as a per project thing. Does that want to just be like you have the standard types in the family in your project,
yeah,
and then you duplicate a type to so that you can put in the family name or in the type name, like it's this standard size, but it's ripped to this.
Yeah.
So that when that family type comes through in the BOM as the type name of the Revit type, the factory and procurement will hopefully notice that and see like, oh, we ordered this size, so the BOM number stays the same, but we need to rip it for this special case.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, so I think what they end up seeing though is like because they won't see that description in their sort of end result, because the Revit information that we have in there will get filtered out, because what they'll see in the BOM is actually what's from Laura's database.
Okay.
So they'll just see the stock size, which is fine. Yeah. That's sort of what they'll order. So, but I guess we would have that labeled then on our. I think we'd have to just note that on our drawings, so that when the factory or the site crew is looking at it, then they see, okay, this is the piece that's ripped to the size to fit.
Yeah, and I think that would work fine, because the site crew and even the finish team in the factory is working mostly off drawings. at least from what I know. So I think that would work
right.
fine.
The point is that they'd have the trim there as a piece that they know.
Yeah, definitely.
Just too bad. And then I guess the way you have the families set up is that it's not that it's labeling it there as for fascia for eave trim. It's just called exterior trim, right? Or
yeah.
Is it? Okay. So then I think that works totally fine. You pick the piece that you want based off of what's in the family.
Yeah, the Revit family is named like it would be separated as exterior trim standard, exterior trim fascia, but the types within the family are all the standard naming, and they're the same across the two different families. So.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that works. So you just pull the one that you need, and then you can.
Right.
Yep.
Okay. Cool. I guess while I have you guys here, I will also show a little bit of what I've done to window and door families, to editing frame geometry for those. So some of you may or may not know that we're working through a system where we're going to take Revit models into Max and then do rendering and walkthroughs from those Revit export to Max models. And that's how we're going to release the Breeze Atrium, as opposed to developing the configurator for it. It's just going to be the standard layout with a Max walkthrough. So part of that whole process means that the materials set in Revit have to be sort of portioned off to be as close to rendering ability as possible. So the way our windows and doors were set up previously is that the frame was one solid piece, interior and exterior, and it may or may not have had the blue material assigned to that specific extrusion in the family. So instead of just going through the families and making sure that the exterior material, blue _ material parameter, was assigned to those extrusions, I did some editing of the geometry so that we get a separation of the interior and exterior frames. So, and I also went ahead and tried to get close to what the Rhino rendering team has been showing for their window frames, in terms of separating like an outside frame from an inside frame. So you can see here in these new window families that you have a separation of interior and exterior there at the back face of the glass. So these two extrusions are set to take on the material properties of the blue _ interior material parameter that we set for our schedules, and then these two extrusions on the exterior take on the blue material parameter. Same goes for doors. I'll just show the sliding door as an example. So the jamb and the actual frame of the slider is separated between exterior material, interior material, and it's not perfect. It's not accurate to what the Anderson or Therma-Tru windows and doors actually are, but I think for rendering purposes and walkthroughs and such, this is as accurate as we need it to be, and it doesn't screw up anything in terms of our Revit drawings or Revit modeling standards, other than showing an extra line through, and I think that's not a big deal. Luke and I agree on that. I'm going to throw you under the bus there and say
that's fine. Yeah, I mean,
talked about that.
I think that's so minor that
yeah,
I'm not too worried about that. If anybody really has a problem with it, we can discuss it later, or you can write me an angry email. But yeah, that is very low on the priority list of things to fix.
Right. And I've tested it for all the different window and door types in this file. These are just like neighborhood monopoly houses that I had to build in here for the Revit or the walkthrough of the atrium. So I just sort of placed some random window families on here, and they seem to be working. Nothing broke as I placed it. So, but if you guys, I'm going to roll these into Blue Standard, and if you guys find anything that breaks, just let me know. Let Luke and the other Revit managers know, and I can fix it or someone else can fix it. We'll get it resolved if you find problems.
That's cool. To be clear too, I mean this seems like something that we don't need to retroactively fix our windows and doors on current projects, but if we
Oh no.
Yeah. Okay, just want to make sure.
Yeah, if we put it in Blue Standard though, and you need
Right.
to reload from Blue Standard for another reason, it will come in and make that change. So you may end up with sort of some new versions and some old versions depending on what you reload. But it doesn't really. I don't think it'll affect anything whether if you have that mix of old and new things.
Right. Cool.
Yeah, the only reason you would absolutely have to reload all your window and door types for this purpose is if you've gone through your project has gone through the whole process and you're actually going to develop a walkthrough with Jeremy and Josh, and that's pretty far off for any of the current projects we have, so I don't think it's an issue.
Cool. Yeah, I've actually seen what they've done with this model already. It's really cool.
Yeah, it's really exciting. And Josh sent me a link to a thing for virtual goggles. So
yeah,
we're gonna have some virtual goggle walkthroughs of Blue Homes for clients, which is awesome. But okay, I'll turn it over back to you, Luke, before I get too off track.
Okay, thanks, Ryan.
Are you Design SF?
Probably. Where's
it says you're the organizer.
Yeah, I'm the organizer.
It also says Sean Houghton is the organizer, but I don't know. So I'll just do that.
Okay, that came to me.
Cool.
Okay. I should have gotten ready. So the other family update, I think most people saw I think it was yesterday that we were talking about the H-track connectors. I'm going to bring that up really quickly and show you what the change is. And then the other thing that I wanted to talk with you about is I know last week we had discussed linking two models together and using that as a potential way of combining seed models into a project. I haven't worked out all of the bugs. I've sort of figured out what the challenges are going to be in doing that, and I wanted to show you what I've figured out and get some feedback from you guys. But those are the other two things that I wanted to talk about today. But first, let's look at the H-track connectors. So I'm not sure exactly how these were working before or whether they were working before, but they are now updated. So this is the H-track connector family. There were these two parameters before, so connector 1 and connector 2, and those are selecting a nested family of type lighting fixture. And so inside, here we go, H-track connectors is loaded into the H-track family, and these are the different types. There used to be a none type, which I think was, so if you only had one connector, you would set the second one to none. But now we have these two checkboxes, so connector 1 and connector 2, which turn on those connectors. So if you only have one, all you have to do is uncheck the second box. But if you have both of them, leave both of those checkboxes on, and then you select which type of connector you have in those parameters that were already there. Yeah, so that's about it. Oh, there was one other type of connector that I made. Sean here needed a voltage limiter for a project that he was working on, so I added that as a connector type. So yeah, live end connector, I connector, and I don't remember what that one is.
And Luke, that voltage limiter is going to be standard in all kitchen pendants for California projects.
Okay, excellent. All right, that is that. Any questions about those? Have you guys been using those? I guess I thought that they were indirect parts that were being pulled through, but because you have to change them based on what you need, they couldn't be indirect. So now you have to actually choose them. Okay, linked models. Here is what I've figured out. So I'm working in the balance model right here, and this is a loft house model that I've linked in. I've made copies of both of these so that I don't screw up the actual seed models, but both of these were taken, and these are detached versions of the seed models. So you can see in my manage links, I have this loft house file, and as we discussed last time, it's linking to the model which is on the Revit server. So the way that you would work on both of these is that you have your local version of this, you have your local version of this, and if you're working individually in either one of those files, you're working on your local version and syncing back to the Revit server just like you normally do. But then when you link the loft house into the balance, in this case, you point it to the Revit server. And that way it allows multiple people who are working on the same file. So if I open the file and I'm working on it and I have the link to the Revit server rather than to my local loft house model, when Kevin opens the model, instead of, if I was linking to my own local version, it would open on his computer and say can't find the link because it would be called, whatever the model is, _ Eldekinga. So link to the one which is on the Revit server, and it solves that issue. There are some things which are really nice and fairly easy to do in terms of setting the visibility of the linked model. So in your visibility graphics overrides, if you go down to the end, if you have any links, it says Revit links, shows me my linked model. And I have it set up here to say I want to display this linked model in this drawing. I think it's by host view is by default, but you change it over to by linked view, and you can change it to be whichever view in the linked model you want this to show up as. So I know that this one is lower level plan. Okay. Actually, maybe it was a different one. But basically the idea is that as long as you have your view set in that linked model how you want it to show up, you can set it in your hosted model what that's going to show up as. The one thing that doesn't come through that I noticed is all of your view callouts. And it sort of makes sense that they don't come through. Because you could have a view in here which is on page A302 and a view in your host model which is on A302. So you could have two callouts which are referencing the same page that points to two different views. So I think Revit will probably not let you show those, show the view callouts in the linked view. So that's something that we'll have to deal with, but I don't think that's an insurmountable problem. We may just have sort of an overall architectural site plan and do one call out and say, this floor plan is on one page, this floor plan is on another page, and then within those enlarged floor plans, then you'll have your view call outs. So that's something to be worked out, but just to let you know, that's one limitation, is that you can't see view call outs in a linked model. You can, however, show sheets from a linked model inside your host model. So just like I think we looked at it a little bit at the end of last week, in your schedules, there's this little include elements in linked files button. Works the same way for a sheet list as it does for other schedules. So if I click include elements in linked files and hit OK, all of these sheets that show up are the ones from the host model and the ones from the linked model. Whereas if I turn that off, all of the ones from the linked model go away. So you'll have to go into the linked model and rename your sheets so that you don't have duplicate sheets of the same name. So I haven't actually worked in that Lofthouse model too much, but my guess is we probably have some duplicates. I can't find some right now, but yeah. In any case, we'll have to work out our sheet numbering. So you'll still maintain your sheets in the two separate models, but then in order to get the sheet list to look correct in your host model, you'll have to change the names and the numbers of the sheets in the linked model. Oh, I have these separated out by sheet set right now, which I think is why I'm not getting duplicates. But so I have, let's see, bid local, yeah, contract has an A401. Yeah. Anyways, you get the idea. The other thing that you need to do is, let me see if I can find this. There's a way that you can link your phases from one to the other. So you can say the phase in the linked model corresponds to a certain phase in your host model, and that way all of your visibility settings will show up and be correct across the two models. I forget where that is. That might be in your phases. Anyways, the only, so here's, let me pull up I made some notes for this real quick. So I think this is my thinking so far. In the main model, you'll want to show your site plans. You'll have your master sheet list for everything. You have your schedules, and make sure to use that include elements and linked files button. And then for your exterior elevations, you'll probably want to make those in your main file because you want to show everything together rather than showing an elevation for one and an elevation for the other. And then your site elements you'll want to keep inside your main model. And then only the interior views, like your enlarged plans, interior elevations, those sorts of things, are going to be the views and sheets that you will print from your linked model. But all of those sheets will be listed in the sheet list in the main model. So that's sort of as far as I've gotten right now. I wanted to get a sample sort of couple of pages together, but I ended up running out of time before I could show it to you. But yeah, I think this is the way we'll want to go. I've been having some problems with model groups, both trying to load an entire product as a model group, as well as moving around some of the model groups for kitchens that we've been developing to use in seed models. There's sort of hosting issues and constraint issues that we're still trying to work out. So yeah, that's where we are with these sorts of things. Is anybody working on a project right now which it would be helpful to link two models together? Like, do we need to do a test case with somebody, or should we just keep working things out in sort of a theoretical sample realm for now? Nobody? Okay. All right. Does anybody have any other questions? That's sort of the end of my agenda today. We can discuss linked models or model groups or anything else that you guys are running into.
Hey Luke, it's Andrew Daly. Can you go over exactly when to use what connectors? The H-track stuff.
Oh, I can try. And someone else may actually know what each of these is better than I. Sean, do you want to take that?
Can you hear me? Okay. So there are three types of pieces that we need to use. And Luke, I don't know if you can play Vanna White right now. Just to sort of. So the 3-wire I connector is the piece that connects, if you have 2 tracks, that connects them together. The live end connector is basically the piece that gets hardwired to the system, and so you need one of those for each, not each track, but each, for each system of tracks. And so that that gets placed at one end. So if you have 2 tracks, you only need one of them. And then the voltage limiter is a California spec that replaces the live end connector for the kitchen pendants only. And so that will be placed on that track. I don't know if that's clear, but it's kind of the basic rundown.
So is that first connector that we have, is that a duplicate of the 3rd connector, and should that be removed?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, I will do that. So we only have 3 different connectors.
So, Sean, when you have 2 tracks together, do both of them need an I connector at that end?
No, that's the other thing. You only need one connector to connect 2 tracks together. So, and it'll give you a warning. It'll say there are 2 I connectors in the same place. So just make sure that you only have one selected. So actually, if you have 2 tracks together, you probably only need to assign a live end to one end and an I connector to the other end, and then you don't need to assign anything to the other track.
Okay, what about if you have like a 3-way switch so that you have 2 tracks together, one end of the system is going to one switch and the other end is going to another switch? And
is that how that works? I just assumed that it was all wired to the same place and that the switches were just... I'm not that familiar with this, but I just assumed that it would be...
That would still be wired just to that one end connector for the system.
Yeah.
oh, okay.
I think just graphically there, it's probably shown that way just for clarity, like the lines coming off of each end.
Yeah, okay. That's less confusing now. Thanks.
So wait, I guess just to be clear, if you have 2 tracks, between those 2 tracks, whether it's a 3-way switch or not, you have one live connector and you have one I connector, and that's it?
Yes.
And I guess a secondary question is, does it matter what's number 1 and number 2? It's just a matter of having the quantity, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, so before these weren't actually modeled as physical pieces, I've added them, I forget which is which. I think that, yeah, so that one's number 2 and this one's number 1. And yeah, so if you have 2 connected together, you can either have this connector on your first H track or the opposite one on the second H track. It doesn't really matter as long as the as long as the quantities are right. You might get a weird error, the Revit error of you have two things in the same location, which might result in double counting in schedules, which I've seen so many times I can quote verbatim. And it doesn't really matter as long as you have the quantities right. But if you put two H tracks together, you might have number one on one and number two on the other in the same place. We don't really care about that as long as you know that you have the right amount selected and the right types selected.
And I guess I'm assuming the factory will determine which end will actually be the live end. It's not really up to us to determine that.
Right, yeah, I just put those elements in the model. I think before we had those parameters, but unless you have a physical component that is an instance of that parameter inside the model, it won't actually show up in schedule. So I just sort of modeled this dummy connector as a placeholder for that. But yeah, the factory is going to determine where everything goes. They don't get any of that from our Revit model. Any other questions about this or anything else? Okay. So before we end the meeting, I have one more announcement to make. I am not going to be with Blue after the next couple of weeks. I am going to be in the San Francisco office for the remainder of this week, and I will not be anywhere next week, and then the following week I'm going to be in Ann Arbor. So I don't know exactly what's going to happen and who's going to be managing all of the Revit stuff. I'm still talking with Carl and Claire about how to move everything that I'm responsible for now onto other people, and I will let you know as all of that gets worked out. But yeah, this is the second to last Revit meeting that I'm going to be on with you guys. But for all of you who are in Ann Arbor, don't worry, I'll be out there in a couple of weeks. You can tell me what you really think of me before I go. But yeah, it's been really great, and it's been awesome working with all of you. So thanks.
Thank you, Luke.
Thanks, Luke. Thanks for all the help. Thanks, Luke.
Yeah,
Crazy.
my pleasure. Yeah, it's always been crazy.
Yeah.
Oh, come on, you guys don't really need me.
Don't go.
I've offloaded enough of what I know onto you guys. You guys know collectively way more than I do about this stuff, anyways. So, yeah, I'm not worried about you. I've got a whole list of to-do items that I'm sure you all as a group are going to collectively be able to take care of way better than I could take care of them by myself. So, I think we've come a long way. I've been in this role here with Blue for just over a year now, I guess, and I guess a lot of you probably weren't with Blue when I took over this role, but no matter when you came on, since you came on, I'm sure things have changed a lot, and of course, at these sorts of milestones, you look back and take the long view of things rather than looking at, oh my God, I broke that family yesterday and I have to fix it today. But I think what we've been able to do as a group in the last year since taking on Revit is really impressive. And I had no idea what I was doing when I got into this, and things have changed a lot over the last year, and I've learned a ton by making a lot of mistakes, and thank you guys for putting up with those mistakes as I was learning how to do this. But I think we're not in a perfect situation now, but we're way better than we were a year ago, and I think the best possible thing to take out of this is I feel you guys are now all ready to continue taking this base that we've developed, and I think it really is just a base, and really fleshing it out and sort of tightening things up and getting a really smooth system together for doing all of this stuff in Revit. So have fun.
You too.
Yeah, thanks. Okay, that's all I've got for today. yeah, like I said, I'm not going to be in the office next week, but I will be in Ann Arbor the week after. So most of you, I will see you then.
So are we
Cool.
still having a Revit Forum next week?
That is officially up to you guys now. I mean, I think it's good.
Go for it, Ryan.
I've tried to offload my work onto other people because that's what I do. But I think, I feel like half of the time you guys are presenting as much as I am anyways. Like today, Ryan, you were showing stuff. Everybody has a hand in making all of this stuff, and I'm not the sole hand of this. So I think it's good to share things with each other, and as somebody develops something, to show everybody else what they've made, and more importantly, to get feedback on it and make sure that it works how everybody wants it to work. And I've said constantly that the hardest part of my job has been getting feedback and seeing what I've made being used by people so that we can refine it so that it works better for the people who are using it. So I still think it's a valid way to do information transfer and to record these meetings and post them to the YouTube channel so that if somebody has a question later, point them to that as a way to figure it out. Again, lazy me. It's better to have somebody watch a video than have to explain something to people 30 times. So I think as a way of capturing information and having discussions about the way that things should be set up and what things need to change, I think it's really valuable. So I would encourage you to do it, but like I said, right now I don't know exactly what's going to happen and who's going to be managing a lot of the stuff that I do, but I think most of that will be worked out in a couple of weeks when I'm out in Ann Arbor.
Cool.
All right.
Hey everyone, just a heads up on the trim families. I'm not going to roll those out until we have approval for the shortened list of sizes. So just be aware that it's on its way. That's all.
Thanks for bringing us back to reality, Ryan.
He could sense you guys were tearing up, and he didn't want you all to start crying.
Yeah.
Well, shit, Luke. I don't think I'll see you in Ann Arbor next week. So, man, drop the bomb on me.
Yeah. Well, sorry. I'm going to send out an email to everybody in blue probably this afternoon. I told the San Francisco team here, well, the design team at least, yesterday. So I'm going to send an email out to a broader list of people this afternoon. But I figured since we had this today, I wanted to let you guys know.
All right.
All right.
All right.
Thanks, Luke.
Yep.
Ooh,
My
Thanks, Luke.
my pleasure.
Thanks, Luke.
Yep.
thank you, Luke, very much.
Thanks, Luke. You the man,
Thanks,
Luke.
Luke.
Yeah. Thank me now. You're going to hate me in 2 weeks when everything gets blamed on me.
Yeah, I already have a voodoo
Already
doll
been
here.
working going.
Right? Like, oh yeah, no, I've been here long enough to know what happens when people leave. It's everything is going to be my fault for at least the next 6 months. But that's fine. I won't be here to take it.
Now we'll just wait, Ryan.
Bye.
All right. I'll talk to you guys soon. Shoot me an
Okay,
email or give me a call if you need anything before the end of this week. And I'll still have access to email next week, but I'm not sure if I'll be able to answer it in a timely manner. So send it to Revit managers because there's a couple more of those who can take care of things.